Someone asked me recently what I photograph. And I said, well, street photography, people on the street, everyday life, that kind of thing. And the reaction was exactly what I expected. That slight pause, that look like, oh, so you just photograph strangers without asking them. Isn't that a bit creepy? And I wanted to say, no, you misunderstood. It's not like that. But well, then I stopped. Because actually, maybe they hadn't misunderstood at all. Maybe the problem was my answer. Because when I really think about it, when I look at the photographs I've made over 20 years that I actually care about, they're not really about people. Not in a way that implies. And I don't think the great street photographers were about people either. Let me show you what I mean. Eugene Atget photographed Paris for 30 years, from around 1888 until his death in 1927. Tens of thousands of images, doorways, courtyards, shop windows, staircases, empty markets at dawn, streets before anyone had arrived. Almost no people. When there are figures in his photographs, they are often blurred. Ghosts of movement, barely there, almost accidental. He used a large format camera with long exposures. People moved through the frame and disappeared. He didn't chase them. So what was he photographing? Not people. He was photographing time. The feeling of a city at a specific moment in history. The texture of stone and iron and glass. Paris before it was modernized, before Haussmann's boulevards erased the old city. He was making a record of something that was disappearing, and the absence of people made that feeling stronger, not weaker. He was photographing loss before it had fully happened. Now jump forward 60 years. New York, Saul Leiter. Leiter is interesting. He studied to be a rabbi. His father was a prominent Talmudic scholar, but he ended up in New York in the late 1940s and started painting and then photographing in the same few blocks of the East Village where he lived for almost his entire life. And his photographs are, well, they are strange, beautiful but strange, because the people in them are often barely visible. A figure glimpsed through a steamed up bus window, a red umbrella, the face beneath it, gone. He said himself that he was interested in the possibilities of photography to evoke rather than document. He wanted the mystery of the image, not the information. So what was Saul Leiter photographing? Light, color, the way a city looks through glass, through rain, through distance. The people are there, but they're not the point. They're more like evidence that life is happening somewhere inside all that beauty. They are proof of existing warmth. He photographed the feeling of being almost inside something, but really not quite. The feeling of watching the world from a slight remove. That is a deeply personal thing to photograph, and it has almost nothing to do with street photography as most people describe it. And then there's Daido Moriyama. If Leiter is all softness and color and distance, Moriyama is the opposite. High contrast, grain so thick it almost dissolves the image. Fast, aggressive, close. He shot thousands of frames per day. He doesn't wait, he doesn't compose, he moves. And the people in his photographs are, well, what exactly? They are not individuals, they are not portraits. They are kind of an energy. Motion, texture, a face caught mid-blink, a crowd reduced to dark shapes, bodies in a pachinko parlor, faces lit from below, barely human. His most famous photograph is a stray dog on a road in Misawa, 1971, slightly out of focus, grain everywhere. The dog stares into the camera with an expression that is, well, ancient somehow, suspicious. but alive. There is no decisive moment here. There is no composed frame. There is just this animal and this photographer and this road and the feeling that something real is happening. Moriyama said that he photographs because he wants to tear a piece of time and space out of the flow of the world. Not to document, not to capture people, to possess a fragment of reality before it disappears. That's not about people, that's about time again. That's about the terror of impermanence. The same thing Atget was circling, just expressed in the opposite visual language. So here's what I think is actually happening in street photography, in the best of it. The people are not the subject. The people are the proof that time is passing. A street without people is just architecture. Add a person, add a gesture, a shadow, a coat caught in the wind, and suddenly you have a moment that will never ever exist again. The person is what makes the time visible. That's why the photograph matters. Not because we care about that specific individual, but because they make the present tense real. Atget understood this and removed the people almost entirely. Leiter buried them in light and reflection. Moriyama dissolved them into grain and contrast. Three completely different approaches, all pointing at the same thing. Now, when I go out with my camera and I think about this more and more recently, I'm not looking for interesting faces. I'm not waiting for the decisive moment, whatever that means. I'm looking for something I can't quite name yet. A quality of light on a wall, the geometry of shadows, the way a street looks at a particular hour when most people are somewhere else. And then if someone walks through that, if a human figure enters that space and changes it, makes the time visible, then I press the shutter. That's the tension I'm actually working in. Not people versus no people, but time and the evidence of it. So the next time someone asks you what you photograph, you could say people on the street and watch the paparazzi look again. Or you could say what I think is actually true. I photograph time, I photograph the feeling of a city, I photograph the moment just before something disappears. The people just help me do that. If this changed how you think about what you're actually doing out there, let me know in the comments. And if you've been photographing something you can't quite name yet, I'd really like to hear what it is. See you out there or in the next video. YouTube thinks this video may be interesting for you as well.